All right, I will we'll call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of Ridgway Town Council, Thursday, October 21st, 2021, to review preliminary design for the Amelia Street project. I guess, do we need a roll call? A workshop like this, we probably won't go more informal.
It's fine either way. Why don't we just do roll call just in case?
Roll call, please.
Council members Beck. It's not on.
No.
Pirelli. Present. Family.
Here.
Lakin.
Here.
Schuyler.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. All right, thank you. Welcome everybody. Hopefully we don't have to be here all night for this. And, I guess, Preston, you want to lead us off or you want to have Joanne lead us off?
No, happy to. Thank you, Mayor. So appreciate everyone being here tonight. So I'll give some general background about how we've gotten to this point. So kind of a 30,000-foot level overview, and then I'll turn it over to Ron and Joanne to run through what they've been working on the last 4, 5, 6 months in relation to a preliminary design for Amelia Street. So based on council direction last fall, so last budget cycle, money was set aside in this year's budget for a design of Amelia Street to be completed. At a council meeting, I think it was back in April, Ron and Joanne presented a scope of work, existing conditions, typical sections. There was plenty of other stuff they presented to council in an effort to obtain collective input from you all to inform next steps on the design process. That input was gathered at that April council meeting, and since that time, Ron and Joanne, specifically Ron, have done a tremendous amount of work getting this current design iteration that's going to be presented tonight ready to go. So thank you all very much. The work, so I'll just kind of give a general overview of the work that's been done, but Joanne and Ron will go into more detail. The work completed to date includes a topographic survey, ownership mapping, modeling of existing conditions, identification of encroachments, and the design includes curb, gutter, valley pan, sidewalk, ADA elements, asphalt, runs the gamut. But again, they'll go into it in more detail about where it is and where it isn't along Amelia Street. Staff has held a variety of meetings with stakeholders and property owners. There's more detail in the memo before you about those meetings. The whole point of them to gather more input on the design and to give folks an opportunity to learn more about the immediate term, long-term impacts of the project, specific impacts to certain properties based on the current design. And the purpose of tonight's workshop is simply for Joanne and Ron to present the current design iteration and for you all, council, and for members of the public to ask questions and provide additional input. The expectation is that council, either this evening or a meeting subsequent to this, will provide direction on the design and next steps for this project in general. Again, it doesn't happen, it's not mandatory that it happen tonight, but we want to have a transparent conversation about where this design currently is. And then just want to be clear about a couple things. The design is too preliminary for anything other than a very general ballpark estimate of what it would cost to construct the entirety of the scope of work. I know someone on this dais or someone in the audience is going to ask that question about what the price tag will be, and Ron and Joanne will do their best to give a ballpark estimate, but that's all it is. So just to be clear there. And also there's no, you all know this, there's not any existing immediate plans to construct or to move forward with construction. This is all subject to council direction and annual budget appropriation. I hope that makes sense.
I thought I might give a little further background about why Amelia Street is even being considered for a paving project like this. And because I'm the only one who's been on council ever since this first came up, I thought it'd be a good idea to mention it. Is that okay with you, Preston?
Yeah, please.
Basically, a lot of you probably are familiar with the town's dirt streets. And the fact that because of the dirt streets, we have to apply mag chloride once a year at least, and sometimes we do a supplemental application in order to keep the dust down. And the neighborhood, basically between Sherman, which is also Highway 62, and County Road 5, came to us years ago, probably more than 10 years ago, maybe even 15, very concerned about the dust from the amount of traffic that drives on Amelia from the highway to County Road 25. County Road 5, people going up to Elk Meadows, up the Pines, accessing the high country that way, as well as lots of county vehicles and quite a few residential people who live either in Elk Meadows or somewhere along the way. So we probably put this project in its very, very vaguest form on the capital improvements plan something like 10 to 15 years ago. And initially talked about maybe just chip sealing. I'll let Ron and Joanne talk about those kinds of choices in their presentation. But I just thought there might be a lot of newcomers to town that don't know why we're here, why we're even considering this. And I just thought you all should know that. So hopefully that's helpful. And again, if you have questions about any of that, we'll probably let Ron and Joanne do their presentation first, and then we'll take questions after that.
But was there also not a movement to help move this forward with the fact that we were trying to provide safe access for the school kids and get a sidewalk all the way down Amelia there?
No, that's a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Russ. That's definitely a big part of the puzzle as well. The CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation, has a grant fund they call Safe Routes to Schools. The sidewalk that exists on a couple of those blocks on the south side of the highway and all the way to the school on the north side of the highway came from a Safe Routes to School grant, I believe. Probably again, 10, 12, 15 years ago.
It was during Bob was here.
Dates back to Greg Clifton's tenure as town manager. So yeah, that's a big part of it as well. Thanks for mentioning that. Sure.
The other thing about it is that railroad and Amelia in the town's master plan for roads were designated the two collectors. And we've done railroad. I think that was part of why it ended up on the CIP probably 15 years ago.
Okay. Hopefully everybody heard that. I know Joanne's kind of soft-spoken, but if you didn't hear,
I'll do better.
you didn't hear what she said. She was talking about how the town's transportation master plan, railroad and Amelia are kind of feeder
Collector
streets. And so they, again, when you look at the amount of traffic that comes in and out of Ridgway on both those roads, they get a lot of impact. And that's why we're considering a project of this nature, one of the many reasons. So Preston, were you just assuming we'd go ahead with this presentation at this point?
I believe so, if you guys are okay with that.
Yep. Great, go ahead.
Someone see it and be heard.
Yeah, why don't you actually hold that microphone, if that's okay. Or you're gonna, where do you want to be?
I can do this, and if everybody can hear me, or I can do this.
That'll help.
Okay. Does that work?
That definitely helps.
Okay. So they've sort of covered the purpose of the workshop, and a little bit, the next slide is a little bit about the more specifics from the April council meeting. The extent of the project along Amelia was supposed, they asked that we go for the preliminary design from Sabeda on the south to Yates subdivision on the north. Yates subdivision is the north boundary. That is where the last house is that looks like it's in town. The amount right away is a bit limited on Amelia, and the decision was to go with two 12-foot drive lanes because it is a collector, not to include any defined parking because of the limited size of the right-of-way and the encroachments into the right-of-way. One of the primary functions of the project was to get a continuous pedestrian route, and the decision was that the east side looked like it made more sense. There was more sidewalk already existing, and to try to limit the number of places where pedestrians were crossing for safety reasons. There's sidewalk at Hyde on the west side, so a crossing there, and then to have crossings at Charles and at Clinton for the school. Next. We looked, for the preliminary design, we used a number of references for the engineering criteria. The sidewalk is based on meeting what's called the PROAG, the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guideline from the Access Board. That's a federal board that sets the rules for ADA. Driveway cuts also need to meet ADA. So the maximum cross slope, the slope that runs from the back of the walk to the front of the walk of the curb, has to be less than 2%. And the longitudinal slope running parallel with the walk needs to be less than 8.33%. There's also a requirement to either have the walk separated from the vehicular traffic or to have a grade break. And for the most part, due to the limited right-of-way, we've used curb and gutter for the purpose of providing separation between the vehicular traffic and the pedestrian right-of-way. And then each of the intersections that has a sidewalk needs to have an ADA ramp that meets the PROAG. For vehicular traffic, the design is based predominantly on a policy on geometric design of highways and streets, commonly known as the Green Book, and it's prepared by the Association of State Highway Engineers. Because of the residential nature of the street, we used a 20-mile-an-hour design speed, noting that there's no plan to change the currently posted 15-mile-an-hour speed. And then we used the design elements for a collector street because that's how it sits in the town's master plan. Drainage predominantly runs from west to east and south to north. The exception to that is on the south end of Amelia, South County Road 5, where part of it runs to the south. The design, for the most part, follows the historic drainage patterns. Some challenges. This slide probably comes from the first discussion. The school and CDOT have their slope that supports their elevation substantially into the right-of-way. I don't know that the red line is still on that slide, but about where the grass or the vegetation starts on the right is about the middle of the right-of-way. So they're using both CDOT and the school are using a substantial portion of the right-of-way. Some of the other challenges with the design was that the buildings on the east side in some places are considerably lower than the road, and there are some steep driveways going downhill to get to those. And then in addition to the school and CDOT, there are some private improvements in the right-of-way. The design templates for the road, a template being the cross section of the road. For the most, in most places going from east to west, from west to east, there's a 4-foot valley pan, and then 2 12-foot drive lanes, 2.5 feet of curb and gutter, and a 6-foot sidewalk behind that. And on the outside of the valley pan and on the back of the sidewalk, there are 6-to-1 recovery areas, so that if you accidentally step off the sidewalk, you shouldn't trip your ankle, twist your ankle. There's a 2-foot recovery area behind the sidewalk. And on the west side, there's a 4-foot section that's at 6-to-1 or less that would allow for emergency parking and for somebody to pull off. And then from there, there's 2-to-1 slopes to catch back to match existing grade. There are a couple of exceptions to that standard template. From Hyde to Clinton, we intend to retain all of the existing concrete that was put in the project John referenced. So there's existing pan or curb and gutter on the west side and curb and gutter sidewalk on the east side. So the design in that section or the work in that section would be just to excavate between the two pieces of concrete enough to get support to the asphalt and to pave it. From Marie to what we call the Marie Hyde, the north end of Marie, there is existing concrete pan and sidewalk on the west side. The intent there would be to just add 2 12-foot drive lanes and curb gutter and sidewalk on the east side, and then match existing grades. This is the profile. This is a layout of the road. There's a graphic of it in the back that everybody can see. We're starting at Sabeda. Ron, do you want to talk about anything in here, or do you just want to talk to people one-on-one and what's happening there?
Other than I didn't know who everybody was at each driveway, so you're called driveway 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., like that. Just to get oriented, Billings is driveway 3 and 5, and driveway 2 would be Sabbath, and then as you go north, you catch the other people like that. So this is more of a layout. I do have cross sections of every driveway to show what the impact would be as it goes right on the private property line, where the back of the sidewalk would tie into the private property. And we can go over that individually afterwards if you'd like. And so all I need to know is which driveway number you are, and I can pull it out and look at it.
And the same graphic with the numbering is on the door there, so you can find your own. So we can skip these 3 slides.
Want to explain the teacher? Oh, never mind.
Does everybody know what the Teacher Ridge Road is? Or do I need to explain that? There's a road on the north side of the school that takes off of Amelia at an angle going northwest. And one of the houses back there behind the school was called the Teacher Ridge. I don't know if it still is, but that's what that road is. Intersections, we're not making any changes at Sherman. That got done as part of one of the CDOT funded pedestrian processes and with ramp. County Road 5 South, we're going to change the flow pattern to emphasize that the main road from Amelia if you're going southbound from the highway on Amelia, the road is going to encourage you to go to County Road 5 as the main route. We're going to maintain from there south, the road will be just 2 lanes with the curb gutter and sidewalk on one side. At the intersection, we'll have 2 12-foot lanes with a curve of 100-foot radius and a 4% super to the inside. And then the curb and gutter along there will have a 20-foot radius.
What's a
Clinton-
4% super to inside? 4% super to inside?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Instead of the road having a crown, you tip it to make it so that the vehicle, the centrifugal force doesn't try to pull you out. And a 4% slope is what we have on Lena, like in front of the post office and True Grit, to give you an idea what that kind of slope feels like.
Okay.
Clinton on the west side, where the school bus traffic is, already has 2 15-foot travel lanes. And so we'll keep that. And those will also just have the 20-foot radius at the curb return. The teacherage takes off at a goofy angle. Yeah. And so we're going to widen out the curve in there so that it's a little less difficult to be coming southbound on County Road 5 and get into the teacherage road. And we met with the school and they're thinking about which way they want to run their traffic. They may change the one way again. This is just a graphic of the layout for County Road 5 intersection. You can see how the road is, the main route is really designed to make you want to go back and forth on County Road 5. And then the piece coming in from the south going north on Amelia would come in at the apex of the curve, again, making it seem like the main route is to go up County Road 5. I think that would need a stop sign at the Amelia going northbound. And I think the town probably would want to discuss whether it makes sense to either make it a 3-way or at least make it stop coming into town. Next.
And the reason the intersection is coming in at the apex, so when you drive into the intersection, you can see out your windshield down Amelia Street to the north and up County Road 5 to the left. You don't want to come into a T intersection where you've got to look way over your left shoulder to see if somebody's coming down the road. So the design of the intersection is to bring it in so that when you make a decision to pull out into traffic or across the road, you're doing it at a perpendicular angle so you can see what traffic is coming.
Culverts. Cottonwood Creek has a 54-inch diameter pipe that was replaced, I want to say maybe 25 or 30 years ago. What did we decide, Robert?
A long time.
It was replaced a long time ago. It's pretty deep. We don't have enough separation to have a safe sidewalk that doesn't have a rail in there. So that section will get a rail so that if somebody were to fall off the sidewalk, there'd be something there to catch them rather than hitting the culvert at the bottom. It doesn't impact the street profile. south of County Road 5 on Amelia, there's a 12-inch culvert and an 8-inch culvert, both of which just barely have gravel on top of them. So we need to raise the road profile enough to be able to get a good bed of gravel and some asphalt on top of them. At the Teacher Ridge, there's an irrigation culvert and a stormwater culvert, and both of those are too short. So both of those will need to be extended. I'm not sure if we can find more 21-inch oval concrete pipes. That pipe may need to be replaced. Utilities and private encroachments have, well, there will need to be some adjustments of those. We'll be reaching out to each of the utilities if council decides they want to proceed with this, to let them know the things that are looking to be problematic. In terms of electrical, there are power poles and guy wires, and transformers that could be problems. There are foam pads that are in the way of the sidewalk. There are meter cans and valves and our big relief valve station that's in the way. And then each of the manholes that will now be in pavement will need to be adjusted to grade. Right now, on the gravel streets, we keep the manhole lids anywhere from 6 inches to a foot deep so that when they blade the road, they don't take the top off the manhole. So all of those will need to be raised to be at asphalt level if and when it gets paved. And then there's some vegetation, a number of mailboxes and some fencing in the right of way that would need to be moved until we have the final design. Quantities and specifics on that are a little on the vague side. Now the thing we all want to know. I did a real preliminary cost estimate. I just took the overall length of the road, overall length of the sidewalk, an assumption of how much we're going to have to dig out to get enough structure to support the road. And it looks like in today's dollars and today's costs, it's somewhere between 3.5 and 4 million. So it is not an inexpensive project. The financing for it, CDOT right now through the Regional Transportation Planning Units has money for sidewalks, and if there's if the road needs to be redone to accommodate the sidewalk, sometimes they're willing to help with the road. The town has had some, I believe, has had some informal discussions with the county already about, both ends of it are in the county. And if they might be able to be a partner in the project. In general, it's hard to find outside grant funds for doing road work. Even when Energy Impact had a lot of money, they were hesitant to support roads. And now that they have almost nothing, I think that would be a stretch. And then, maybe we look to phase the project. Every time you stop and start, it costs money. And so that would add to the project cost. I would recommend against breaking it into too small of pieces, and think that maybe what you would want to do is focus either on the north or south first and then do the other. That is it. Questions from, I can actually turn it back to the mayor and you can run it.
Okay. Well, be prepared to answer some of the technical
Yeah,
questions for sure.
Stand here.
What was your thought, Preston? Just open it up for questions from council. Why don't we start up here? Is there questions on council? For either?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Terry. Can you hear me? Yeah. With regards to phasing, you had talked about phasing from, Sherman North or Sherman South. Could there also be potential other segmentation? For example, Sherman North is one budgetary, module, call it. Sherman South to CR5 is another. From CR5 South to the Amelia, turn to the east there. Could that be another third segment? In other words, could there be some additional segmentation rather than just phasing north and south? Could you also break it into other segments, at least for determining budgets?
If you're asking us to do that for you to consider in a budget, we can certainly do that. And you can break it wherever you want. And then you wouldn't want to break it in the middle of an ADA ramp or anything like that, but you could do it block by block if that's the direction the community wants to go. It's just the problem of breaking it up is you got mob in and mob out or demo, and
That's short for mobilization.
mobilization. And so it just adds to the project. And doing a small segment, I mean, if all you did was the block from County Road 5 to Sabeta in a block, that would be, the cost to bring in the equipment and do the work would be considerably higher than if you were doing 3 or 4 blocks at once.
Or you lose the economies of scale. But from a council point of view, in terms of direction, if, for example, we were to call segment 1 Sherman North, segment 2 Sherman to CR5 or whatever cutoff you want, and then that third segment, and say we don't approve one or more of the segments, rather than just phasing them, approving them all and having them phased, that would create additional mobilization expenses, but we may choose to only pick 1 or 2 segments to do. I was just exploring that possibility. I'm not suggesting that's what we do, but I was just trying to see if it's possible.
What is this third segment? If you're going Sherman North,
Right,
and
that's
Sherman
one.
South to County Road 5, what's the
Right.
third segment?
That little spur from County Road 5 to the east,
Sabeta.
Sabeta turnoff there.
Yeah.
The part that I know Dana was most concerned about, just in preparation for that concern. Or potentially the most concerned about. I don't want to speak for her.
Well, and I even thought, just since we're talking about that section in particular, we might consider just doing curb and sidewalk there, and not doing the paving from County Road 5 to Sabeta.
Which means that County Road 5 intersection there would, still keep the same profile that they have. It's just, it would truncate by driveway 2, rather than going all the way to Sabeta. That
But
was the thought.
sidewalk would go all the way to Sabeta.
Right, that could be.
Essentially, I'm open to discussion.
I have a second question too. Would the requirements of the driveway interfaces in these plans require that the property owners make improvements to interface to it, or would that be left to their discretion? In other words, would we be imposing necessary costs on property owners that have the driveways that interface to this project?
No,
Joanne says no, she's shaking her head.
no,
Okay,
we've got everybody matching at this point
Within the right of way.
within the right of way.
great. Well, thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Anybody else on council have a question?
Is curb and sidewalk just itself an option, or is that kind of counterproductive with drainage and runoff?
You'd need to shape the road to whatever you did with, the road right now. I haven't looked so much on Amelia, but right now I'm dealing with Cora, and it has these little irregularities. When you do curb and gutter, you gotta get it sort of straight. And so there might need to be some changes in the profile of the road. But yes, I mean, we've got,
Yes and no.
huh?
Yes and no. If the design of the sidewalk goes
Street guy.
down below the existing grade, and we have to cut the street down to match it, we lose the structure that's already there. So you have to go down and then put structure back up to match it. If the sidewalk is higher than the existing grade, then it's not a problem. You just add gravel to match it. So yes and no.
I would just point out, for example, that the sidewalk that went in on Amelia between basically the south end of Marie and the highway. And on a couple blocks, it's on the west side, and on the last block, it's on the east side, but it abuts a dirt street. And there was, I think we were lucky there where there was minimal reshaping of the road required, but it can be done, right?
The other piece of this is, again, the amount of traffic on that south portion of the road going to County Road 5 and on the north side going to the elementary school. Like, we
True.
have streets
Yeah.
to
I don't
funnel.
think anybody's arguing with at least the potential need for paving on the most traveled portion. I think we're basically trying to ease the concerns of the neighbors who abut the road from County Road 5 to Sabeta. But you know, it's a bigger discussion about the rest of the project, like you said, because of the amount of traffic.
Yeah, I think, I mean, originally the discussion wasn't around Sabeta at all. I can't actually remember the reasons why we kind of lumped that in. I think it might have been just to see what the design looked like since we were doing work. If I remember correctly, when we budgeted for the study, it was really for Amelia between County Road 5 and the Yates subdivision.
Yeah, I believe that was the primary intent, and I think that we just kind of threw in Sabeta to see what it would look like, and then also to provide an easier access for those kids coming out of Solar Ranch.
Yes, that was you're right, Russ. That was it. It was the safety concern for walking out of Solar Ranch because we have so many kids there.
Okay. Questions from the audience? I think I saw Robert's hand go up.
Hey, can I ask one more question before we leave council?
Yeah,
Questions?
go ahead.
Is there, addressing another concern I've heard from others, is there an alternative to asphalt paving, concrete paving? I don't pretend to know which is better for the environment and all the other consequences, but is there an alternative to asphalt paving that is more or less expensive? I assume would probably be more, but.
Well, each material has its drawbacks and assets, you might say. Concrete, when you do a life cycle cost with it against pavement, asphalt, the concrete is more initially expensive, but theoretically it lasts longer than the asphalt does. And at some point in time, 50 years down the line or 150 years line, they kind of mellow out. They're the same expenses. But the initial cost of concrete is a lot more for concrete than it is for asphalt.
Lower operating costs, so to speak, then.
Yes, maintenance cost.
The road is less expensive to maintain, but if you have a water leak or you need to make a sewer tap, it's more expensive than with asphalt.
Yeah, if you have to cut the concrete, go down and fix the water main, it's a lot more expensive than an asphalt street. If you're comparing chip and seal with asphalt, chip and seal does not take turning movements very well at all. It's first of all, it has structural strength. It is nothing.
I ride motorcycles. I can attest to that.
And it will come out from underneath you, and it'll require a lot of maintenance real soon. The best product, and this is probably why we went with the structure we had for the number of car traffics, basically from County Road 5 and the bus traffic, would be an asphaltic street. I think I used a structural number of a little less 4.5 or around that range to come up with my thicknesses of layers. To get the same strength in a chip seal, we'd have to go down 2.5 feet and rebuild that all with gravel. and bring that up. So it's, then you have excavation, you have pit run costs and class 6 costs, and it starts getting cost prohibitive. So with the bus traffic, which is probably the predominant user all the way from Sabeda out past the teacher age going out north, that should probably be a fairly hard structure. Anything south of Sabeda, that would be a good candidate for chip and seal because there's probably 3 or 4 people drive that a day, and that's it. So that would be my suggestion.
One last naive question. With the curb and gutter and all of the engineering that went into the non-road portion, could the road itself be less than paved? In other words, could it be a compressed road base or with recycled asphalt or something that's not traditional paving? Is that an option, or does that not work with the remaining engineering of the curbs and gutters and pans and all of the things that you went through?
Well, the addressing recycled asphalt, that was a very good product for a long time because it was a waste product. And the asphalt people have figured out that they can stick it back in new asphalt at about 20%, 20 to 25%.
Just blend it, huh? Yeah.
And so you can't, it's very difficult to find reclaimed asphalt, we call it RAP, anymore for that purpose, because the companies that do the reclaiming of the asphalt keep it because it saves them a lot of money in making asphalt. So that's a recycled material that's already found a source, and so it's pretty much gone. There were some experiments where people went down and did processing of class 6, added cement to it to give it some strength as they processed it, and added water, and that is great until you have a water leak or something and you gotta go down and dig through it. And the strength of it comes from it being the same density on either side. So after you fix the water leak and you come back up, you have to process all of that material again and regenerate it and get it to process and hydrate again to get the same uniform density. So it's a real hard product to repair. Probably, the easiest one to get down and repair a water line and come back up is your gravel with your mag chloro. Next to that would be asphaltic pavement. And then concrete is, you don't want to even talk about.
Yeah, I know we talked when we were doing the ramp project, we looked into options for some of these newfangled things like you were talking about, mixing Portland in with the existing sub-base material and creating a sort of new custom hard surface. But my recollection was that the tests and the experiments they've done with it worked better in milder climates. They didn't
Yeah,
work
it
as
doesn't
well.
do freeze thaw.
It doesn't do freeze thaw well. Now, I think to your point, Terry, I think it's worth, especially depending on how long the cost of it, we need to wait in potentially doing this project. We should certainly keep looking at new innovations in hard surfacing options because why wouldn't we, right?
Of course, we could use cobblestone, then we could have the Ridgway Roubaix bicycle ride.
All right, let me get to audience questions. And I would ask that you come up here just so that the people on Zoom can hear you. If you come to the podium, please. Robert, you want to come on up?
Hey everyone, underneath this mask, I'm Robert Sabbath. Just a couple of comments here. I think that if one of your prime motivations here is the dust issue, I think that you ought to consider how much traffic there is on County Road 5 itself and how much dust that generates And it seems that the configuration, the topography and the air currents just carry that dust and blows it east. So I would encourage you to not neglect the surface of County Road 5 going up at least a couple, 3, maybe even 400 linear feet from that intersection. And as part of that consideration, I think that there's far less traffic from County Road 5 to Sabeta. So I think that you can consider not taking that and using those resources up County Road 5. And if you're going to go that route, Ron, the other day at our meetings, I've been thinking about your alternative approach to that intersection. And the more I think about it, the more merit I think it has. Several reasons. And actually what that alternative plan is carrying the valley pans coming down County Road 5, and instead of doing a 90 at the west side of Amelia Street, carry them through that curve. And I think that does a couple of things. It complements your plan to make visually obvious, which is the main route of travel. Secondly, the part that you thought was a downside, I think is an upside. Is that that valley pan that cuts across the middle. If you look at the valley pan at High, is it? On Amelia, that does a wonderful job of slowing people down.
It certainly does.
Yeah, so I would encourage that design. And with that, it seems that that would make a really logical place to stop the pavement going south from County Road 5.
Okay, great. Thanks, Robert. Anyone else?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Blackwell. I own a house at 245 South Amelia, and I live in the ADU at 241 South Amelia. And I pretty much daily walk from in between Moffett and High to Sabeta and down Sabeta with my dog. And I can tell you, walking down south, I can't wait till I get past Mr. Savas' house as far as the traffic. And between Lucy Booty's house and Mr. Savas' house is always kind of, I wouldn't call it scary. It's not scary, but it's certainly in that walk, the part where I'm most worried about cars and so forth, especially in the mornings where it narrows down kind of between Phil and Lucy's house there. So I walk that daily, and I watch the kids every day gather at the stop sign at the corner of Moffett and in Amelia, and watch the cars who, when there's kids at the stop signs, the cars stop, but when there's not kids there, the cars don't stop. I've lived there. I bought my house and I haven't been around here. I lived in Telluride for a long time. I bought my house in May of 2016 on Amelia, and I asked the realtor, like, what do you think of the location? And like, just tell me what you think. And she said to me, well, it's a really busy street, but other than that, I like it. And I was like, come on, it's a really busy street. Like, really? And I've lived there 5 years now, and I know exactly what she means. So, you know, and I have a sidewalk right in front of my house. I'm on the west side, and I have a sidewalk, and I'm kind of set off the street. So, and you know, I don't have kids, but you know, people across the street do, and a lot of people in the neighborhood do. And so, you know, I guess from County Road 5 south to Sabeta, I don't see, you know, it's certainly not nearly as much an issue that I see as from County Road 5 to Sherman. And then when I walk north, yeah, it gets kind of scary over there by Riggs, and then you're on the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk disappears, and then there's the school, and it's real broken up. You got sidewalks on the other side. So, I didn't know much about this. I ran into Pat Willits the other day, and he was like, this is going on, and I was like, I'd heard it, but I think it's a good idea, and I know it affects a lot of people. But and then I have one question about the design. I live on the west side. My driveways are 11 and 13. They're really one. And kind of as you walk on that sidewalk in front of my house, there's the road, and then there's that like parking lane. Some of it's grass, and then there's some parking in front of my house. What's going to happen with that?
The sidewalk on your side, on the Marie Scott side, and the pan stays the same.
Does the road stay the same, or does the road
The
move?
road will then start at the edge of the pan and go 24 feet towards the other side.
Oh, towards the other side. So there'll almost be that third lane still there.
There'll still be available parking past the pan or over the pan and the area behind it.
And so
that'll remain gravel.
And that'll remain.
because one part of it's grass, part of it's gravel. Like if you go south of the stop sign, it turns into grass in front of the big empty lot before Gordon and Rebecca's house. And
Right.
it kind of varies in the surface material, but I'm just curious about that as far as the design, I guess. And so I don't know, again, I just wanted to say between Sherman and County Road 5 is where I see, I mean, I walk it every day, and I don't see a lot of school kids walking from Sabeta to County Road 5. And they take the bus. And so, again, that's where I spend almost every day. And then I guess the last thing I would say is I hope, I don't know about, I do know, I may be referring to the kind of the big dip there at the top of Hyde by Dave's old house, which, man, when people are driving too fast and don't slow down, you hear it. It's entertaining because I'm usually yelling at them to slow down, and then I watch them hit that. I'm just like, yes. But I hope that we somehow try to address the speed in this project. And I work as a paramedic in the Territe area, and I spend a lot of time down in like the Mountain Village, the Meadows area, and they have those rounded speed bumps. And I can tell you from driving too fast as a paramedic to a 911 call, those rounded speed bumps work also. And I don't know if that's any idea, and I don't know about much speed control, but I hope in the paving of this project, we try to address the speed control on that street. Because after having lived there for 5 years,
We're always talking.
yeah, I'm sure we are. And maybe that I just, with paving, my first thought is like, oh, that's just going to make people drive faster. And I hope not, but I hope it's just a thought about, can we do some kind of speed bumps? I don't know what they are like, but something to consider speed on that road. And with that, I'll keep quiet, and it's nice to see everybody, and thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks. Michael Saffler, I'm representing Dana Ivers. And most of her concerns have been addressed this evening, and I have to say that's a good thing. And she would really prefer that there be no improvements beyond County Road 5 for most of the reasons that have already been expressed this evening. I know that Pat Willits submitted a letter to that same effect, and the household also submitted a letter to that effect, trying to reinforce the comments that have been made this evening. The stop signs are probably one of the most effective, if people will observe them, uses of public monies in order to slow down the traffic. The traffic is, the speed is one of her big concerns. And I know everybody thinks traffic signs are obnoxious when you have to stop your vehicle, but everybody who is concerned about the speed on a driving route really appreciate them. The idea of the 3 stop signs at County Road 5 was probably a good idea. But going further up County Road 5 probably makes some sense, but it does get into county jurisdiction. So no,
The county line is on the west side of Davis property.
Yeah, Dana's-
Right.
So it's,
Yeah, all Dana's whole property is in the town. But there was some comment about maybe extending it even further.
I think the comment was just to go like 400 or 500 feet past the curve, not even all the way to the end of her property.
Okay. And maybe the end of her property is the appropriate place to stop. I'm not sure. And I have noticed that in driving it myself, that the washboard is significant at the bottom of County Road 5 because of the speed that people come down that hill and then they abruptly brake. And if there's some way to put some kind of speed control before people even get to the bottom of the hill would probably be advantageous. But all in all, she wants to thank you all for addressing what is an issue. And she would like to keep that section beyond beyond County Road 5 down to minimum improvements if any are necessary. Thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
Michael. I would hope that she could see the value of the sidewalk for the kids coming from Solar Ranch. And I think I think it bears repeating that the fact that that stretch of Amelia to Sabeta was included was basically just to see what it would take to do it and what it would look like. And I think we realized from the very beginning that that's a very much less traveled section of road and doesn't necessarily make sense to do any pavement.
And I heard you all say that. Dana's comment was the road is hardly used, and Brad reiterated that. And the school bus goes up there, and so it might be overkill to even put a sidewalk.
I can see that as a point. So we can discuss that. Thanks. You? Anyone else?
Yeah, I do. I'm Andrew McGowan. Nice to see everybody here. I represent a few properties in Solar Ranch and at 220 Sherman. So I have a couple of questions just to get some basic information because this is relatively new as far as information for us is concerned. One of those is we talk about the amount of traffic that goes along Amelia and over into Sabeta. I'm interested as to whether we actually have real numbers as to what that traffic is.
I don't think we've clocked it in a long time. I haven't seen a counter out there in a while.
No, I don't think we've done an actual count in a long time, but it would.
I would gesture that it might make sense to do so, given the fact that we're asking every man, woman, and child in Ridgway to stump up $6,200 for something that, if we don't have that basic number, it makes it hard to justify potentially. The other question I have is whether there have been any recorded accidents on either the south or the north side of Amelia.
I'm not aware. And I get where you're coming from, but my response to that question is always, I'd sure rather not wait for an accident to do something. But,
Well,
what's your point?
I totally, look, I don't have any skin in the game for much of Amelia. And on the face of it, it makes sense. But it is a question of whether we're trying to fix something that can potentially be fixed in another way. And that potential is a sidewalk that needs to be done. I mean, we talk about the kids being there. I don't have children here. So again, I don't have skin in the game, but it's about whether it makes sense or not. If we're concerned about the children going, and then on the other hand, we say that the children are taking the bus from Solar Ranch, which is probably where the majority of them are going, then that may not mean that we need to go certainly beyond County Road 5. But if we don't have the numbers, it makes it very difficult to, at some point, justify going and raising the money and spending the money in that form.
Right.
Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm against your plan.
Your
It's just
point's a good one.
it's just that I think we need to have that basic information on which to be able to go and ask for that. My other concern really is what happens to the increased water flow and water runoff from that increased section of pavement, because it significantly increases the amount of water flow that then works its way down from one of the highest areas of Ridgway all the way down to the river, which is where we have the other property, the 220 Sherman. Last year, just to give you a little bit of, as to why I'm concerned, to give you a little bit of backstory, last year we were asked by the town to provide a significant easement for a fairly large storm drain because what we were told at the time is that the town was already at the limit of the amount of water that it can process going down through that side. Having seen through the rains in the early part of the summer, the floods that we get from the town side of the river, not from the river itself, I can attest to the fact that it's an issue. My real concern is how do you propose to engineer out the increased water flow? Because it gathers and doesn't dissipate. And if we've got further water flow that is not taken away directly into a main, then we're creating problems further down the line.
The stuff to the south of Cottonwood Creek will go into Cottonwood Creek. The stuff from Cottonwood Creek, some of it will go down Elizabeth.
But Cottonwood Creek ends up coming out further down into the town and flooding an area.
But that's the historic runoff.
Right, but we're creating more water. It's not dissipating naturally. You're channeling it.
The amount of what increased, the peak of the runoff, the amount it's increasing is relatively small because the road is magged. And so that water runs off anyway.
It's not collected and channeled into an area. It runs off and dissipates over the whole area where it's magged.
The water runs off the surface that's magged to the borrow ditches.
And the borrow ditches go into.
Then the curb and gutter will be basically doing what the borrow ditches.
Okay. So would you be prepared with the plan to make a statement that it's not going to increase the water levels further down?
And the amount of imperviousness is going to increase, but slightly.
How slight? Sorry, my point is the town has come to us saying that there is already too much, needs an easement, and it needs this pipe going through our property in order to be able to cope with it. And now we're at a point where the town itself is actually potentially increasing the amount of water that's there. Whether it's a small amount or a large amount, we don't know.
Are you talking about Haggart's property?
Yeah.
Okay.
Haggart's.
We didn't ask you for that. I mean, we asked if you wanted to do that because it was part of your development. But we have found an alternate solution for it.
Okay. I mean, I beg to differ. We were asked for it on the basis of which I've just told you now. I mean, I can pull the emails up if you'd like me to. However, I'm glad that I don't think the problem is abated because I've seen the evidence for myself over the early parts of the summer.
Well, nobody's done any of the improvements.
Okay. But my point is that this would then become one of those improvements. It's going to, I mean, you've said so yourself, it will increase. The question is how much it increases. I'm not here to say how much it would or it wouldn't, because I don't have that degree of knowledge, but I'm asking the question.
Okay.
And I'm raising the point.
Impacting your property, I don't see any water getting to you. I mean, the water that comes up.
Any additional
water, yeah.
Well, okay, but you said earlier that water, that the impervious water would increase, but you don't know how much by. But now you're saying it's not going to make a difference.
But it will get into the CDOT storm pipe before it gets to you.
Okay, that's great. And I'm sure that at some point you'll be able to demonstrate that, and you wouldn't mind sitting down with me to show me that, and we'll all be happy.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom want to make a comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
I appreciate it. I wasn't clear if this was a question period or if it's time for our comments. So it appears like combining both.
Questions, comments, go ahead.
Okay, great. I really appreciate the comments so far. I am a big fan of data-driven processes and actually having some, facts to go on. And the last gentleman that spoke did speak about runoff. And, with the plan, with paving and everything, it's going to be put into culverts, which don't absorb. And right now with the mag chloride, it's only on the streets. It runs into the ditches, which it does absorb. So I just want to point out that data driving this decision-making for questions like this is really important. And Robert Sabbath also had some questions about the data that had been looked at for this project. So, I think it's important to gather that. Also, you mentioned as I came onto the meeting that it was a historic plan that goes back 10 years, the Amelia Street project. And in terms of kind of going out a bit to the 30,000 foot view instead of talking about the little details of all the things, how does that factor into our master plan currently, where we built our master plan, revised it in 2019, but we're bringing in a current plan that seems to contradict a lot of our values and visions. And it's confusing as a resident to see this come up and not have any understanding of the process and what our master plan is used as a guiding document. I'm just going to keep talking, and these are a lot of these things are questions, and I don't think that you necessarily have all the answers for them at this time, but I want to ask questions that encourage a little bit more of a transparency in your decision making and the actions you're choosing to do for our community, and reference the master plan. So I'm going to read my letter that I wrote. I've condensed it significantly, but counselors all received my letter Tuesday morning. Here we go. I appreciate the volume of sweat equity you all have in your leadership roles, and how it can be challenging to hear public comments that are critical much of the time. My comments are intended as constructive, and I've done my best to be sure they're accurate. I also want to thank you for your service to our community and stewardship of our vision and values as outlined in our 2019 master plan. I assume town leadership uses our master plan to guide and inform decisions and actions, but I'm not familiar with how you use it in your decision-making framework. Perhaps that's something you can share with us, if not now, at a later time. I've included references to our master plan in the letter I sent you, and I'll read from parts of that now. I quoted the last sentence of our vision in the master plan. We are committed to being economically and ecologically sustainable. I understand from reading over your April minutes that the cost of this project may be upwards of $3 million. We currently have 3 mill levies on our ballot. And my question for town council, which you have in my letter, you don't need to answer them all now, but I don't know how they'll be responded to. Where will the funding come from to support this project? What other paving projects and estimated costs are planned in the future? If this is taxpayer funded, how is it economically sustainable as deemed in our master plan with consideration of future town improvement plans? And then the following statement from our master plan under the key objectives for the growth framework states, growth in an orderly, logical, and sequential pattern outward from the existing town core. More questions. Have business owners in Ridgway's core district had an opportunity to provide input on town priorities for paving streets and sidewalk development? I would think we'd want to channel more traffic into the center core. Why has Amelia Street been prioritized, which is not in the core district? Regarding the vision statement on our commitment to be ecologically sustainable, asphalt and paving are significant contributors of climate change. It's also a fact that traditional asphalt absorbs a significant amount of heat, resulting in locally increased temperatures. Asphalt is made from fossil fuels, generates harmful emissions, and contributes to water pollution. Questions for town council on ecologic sustainability in regards to the Amelia Street project. What research and design factors have gone into minimizing and or mitigating the previously mentioned impacts? Ecologically designed cool paving techniques are available, and I did hear some of those mentioned. And in order to uphold our value, will these such products be used? Do we have the money for that? Has town council discussed the effects of heat absorbing asphalt and paving projects such as contributors of climate change and locally increased temperatures? I was unable to find any records of this project being discussed by our Planning and Zoning Commission or what their findings or votes were. If it wasn't discussed by Planning and Zoning, why not? If it was discussed and voted on, where can I find record of that? Ridgway is home to native deer and other animals who roam our streets throughout the year. Amelia Street is a significant wildlife corridor. The proposed project proposes removing trees adjacent or possibly even in a community member's conservation easement in order to pave 100 feet of County Road 5 from the intersection of South Amelia. It also proposes removing the stop sign here, which would significantly increase speeding in a zone adjacent to and where the road crosses Cottonwood Creek, which is a wildlife corridor. Ridgway is a headwater community of the Colorado River. It's a fact that asphalt emits toxins with runoff and high temperatures increase emissions. These conditions are common with summer monsoons. The last 2 points aren't supported by our value statement, number 1, or our goals in the master plan, which state to preserve, protect, and restore natural habitats, including for wildlife and ecosystems, strengthen the Uncompahgre River corridor as a community asset and environmental resource, proactively manage and protect Ridgway's water resources, advocate for the efficient use of resources and sustainable practices that work to eliminate harmful impacts to the health of the community or natural environment. What considerations were made in the project proposal to address the impacts of area wildlife and the rights of nature? What water capture or filtration systems have been considered to remove toxins and high flow runoff? What considerations have taken place to remove trees adjacent to or in a conservation easement to be replaced with sidewalks and paving 100 feet of County Road 5? Ridgway is located on the eastern edge of the Colorado Plateau, which is a desert. Prevailing winds from the west and southwest transport dust. Dust caused by dirt roads in Ridgway is possibly negligible compared to the dust to our region from the adjacent desert. According to the Center for Snow and Avalanche Studies in Silverton, which is home to the Colorado Dust on Snow program, the movement of dust around the west has increased 300% in the last 2 decades alone, with no signs of abating. Is the rationale for paving roads to reduce dust? The fact that asphalt absorbs heat, further leading to desertification and climate change, is an alarming prospect for a town that relies on snow melt and surface runoff for its water source. What data supports that paving roads in rural communities in Southwest Colorado decreases dust? Have Ridgway residents been surveyed regarding dust? For example, do residents in River Park with paved roads have less dust in their home than residents that live on unpaved roads? What discussions has town council had in consideration of the impacts of climate change on our development and improvement projects? I'm in support of improving the safety of pedestrians in our town with increased sidewalk projects that are built to ADA standards, including crosswalks where needed. Sidewalks do not require paved roads. I'm in favor of continual sidewalks and crosswalks on Amelia Street, specifically on North Amelia Street, for pedestrian safety, walkability, and access to the Ridgway School. I'm in favor of increased signage and street design to slow traffic on Amelia Street and throughout town. I'm in favor of speed bumps in zones with greater pedestrians. If used, street design, speed mitigation is not considered. I'm not in favor of paving residential streets. Dirt and gravel roads naturally curb driving speeds. Paved roads do not. A 24-inch wide street, as I understand it from the design plan, may as well be a highway, as is Sherman Street, with little to no design factors to naturally slow traffic. What considerations have gone into the design of Amelia Street that slow traffic? Have design factors been considered to narrow the streets, such as in our downtown area? Does the budget include more town infrastructure to mitigate speeding traffic, such as additional law enforcement and more signage? Clearly, these are unprecedented times that call for informed and dynamic leadership to maintain our community vision and values. Our town and community invested significant time and resources developing our current master plan, which, as I understand, is intended to guide decision-making from town leadership on every aspect of development. I urge you to consider these points in your decisions for the Amelia Street project and future plans to maintain the economic and environmentally sustainable future we've committed to and invested in. Thank you for your attention and stewardship of our small rural town. Things are different than they were 10 years ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. There was a lot there. And I'm not going to try and address every point because we'd be here all night, but suffice it to say that much of what you mentioned has been taken into account. The need for this project, discussion of it started at council, so that's why it hasn't gone to the planning commission. There wasn't a need for planning commission review. I can see why you and other people who've written letters would think that maybe we should send it to the planning commission for input, and there's certainly an opportunity to do that. I think it's already been addressed that the primary reason for this project is that Amelia Street along the railroad are definitely in our plan as collector streets, as major collector streets for the town. And while I totally empathize with your concerns about climate and the impacts of asphalt, and that's what we've already talked about, possible alternatives, and we will continue to look into that. But I think safety of our pedestrians and of the neighborhood. I can't actually name the study, but I know that the Telluride region, probably 20 years ago, went through a lot of studies about what's called PM10, particulate matter less than 10 microns. And that stuff is definitely more highly generated from dirt streets than it is from pavement. And while I understand why we might want to keep as many dirt streets as we can, the amount of traffic on Amelia, other than the stretch from County Road 5 to Sabeta, you've heard residents comment tonight about how serious the problem is of traffic on there and speeding, and certainly addressing speeding would be a major portion of our proceeding with this project. I don't know if anybody else wants to add any comments to that. But.
I just wanted to mention, just because Johnny brought up the PM10 stuff, that there was a study done that showed, I guess in the US, there's 30 million tons per year of what's called fugitive dust. 25 million tons of that is PM10, and only 2.5 million tons is what's PM 2.5, which is worse for public health. And asphalt actually creates more PM10. It's a more major contributor than fugitive dust is, just from some I've done.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of process, I think it at some point be really nice to know how the master plan is consulted for these decisions. And, these are changed times and we have to act responsibly, and our town has charged our leadership to do that. And, I think these things need more data. That's great that you have some sources to cite, but they need to have processes in place. And I don't see how planning and zoning could be bypassed in a process where we're talking about a significant investment, a significant change to people's driveways. I don't know how we can consider a 24-foot wide streets that don't have like naturally curbed speed barriers, and that expecting that people are going to go 15 miles an hour with a speed sign and have like a friggin' corridor. We need some process transparency here. I think And I just would request that. I've spoken enough. Thank you.
I would just like to add that Vicky spoke a whole bunch about the standard 1 from our master plan, our community value 1, but community value 5 is well-managed growth. And well-managed growth talks about ensuring that our public infrastructure, like streets and sidewalks, are sufficient to meet the needs of our residents, i.e. residents walking along County Road 5 or along Amelia Street. We also have to mitigate natural and human-made hazards like cars with pedestrians. And we said we want to develop a safe and efficient multimodal transportation system. It's really hard to encourage school kids to walk to school or community members to walk around the community when they don't have a safe path to do that. So we talked a whole bunch about community value 1, but let's not forget about community value 5.
Thanks, Beth. And yeah, that was Angela, Vicky, sisters. But and thanks for everybody's comments. I think, Angela, you made a comment that there wasn't transparency. I think the fact that we're sitting here tonight is demonstrating our transparency. Nobody's trying to ram anything down anybody's throat here. The reason we're sitting here is so that we can review the plan that's been developed by our engineers and take public input and decide where to go from here. Nothing is anywhere near being written in stone here. So, I think tonight is evidence of our transparency. And it's also been a project that's been discussed on and off for more than 10 years. Whether or not it's gone to the Planning Commission, Town Ridgway, the Planning Commission typically deals with development proposals. This isn't, I know you could argue that this is a development proposal, but it's really not. It's a street improvement. We rely on our engineering to help us, engineering team to help us evaluate these kinds of things. And I'm certainly not opposed to sending it to Planning Commission before we do anything else to get their input, but I don't think that we've neglected them. Is anyone else?
Yeah, John, with that being said, and without addressing any of the list of specific issues that Angela brought up, I want to thank her for her time and thoughtfulness for putting that much information before us and giving us, more information to think about. I think that if more citizens did that, it would make our lives easier when we have to deal with issues like this. But so I wanted to thank her for the time she put into this.
I agree, Terry, and Angela. I also want to say I appreciate your reasoned, respectful approach here. You've definitely thanked us for our time, and I appreciate that. As somebody who's been doing this for over 30 years, and the fact that you came to us with this incredibly detailed, well-reasoned, respectful input is much appreciated. So.
I'm sorry. Can I rudely interrupt? I can't raise my hand, but my name is Krista Javoronic. I'm a school teacher from the school, and I just wanted to make a quick comment on behalf of safety. I do travel down Amelia every single day going to work, and just on behalf of safety and kids riding the bus versus walking, I'm also a crosswalk guard at the Highway 62 and Amelia crossing. That actually happens to be the most dangerous crosswalk. I've multiple times almost been hit. So I'd like to add that, as we're thinking about this, using this space as a pass-through or what have you, to really think about how we can increase the safety at that particular corner. We've asked the police to come and sit just to slow people down coming down the main highway. But I can see if we're to pave that and we have more people coming through that zone, it might just intensify that crosswalk in the morning and afternoon. The other comment I wanted to make was that just raw data on that road in the morning and afternoon, most of the traffic seems to be construction workers that are working on housing projects that are happening along that road. There's quite a few right now. And then going up to Elk Meadows, for what it's worth, that could be some temporary traffic. I don't know, but I know a lot of people talked about data that hasn't been collected. And those are just some things I've observed over the last year that I wanted to share.
Thanks, Krista. Appreciate it. I think
The other hands are Pat Willis was first.
Pat Willis next. Go ahead, Pat.
I'd like to speak.
Pat Willis is next. Hold on.
All right.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my comments, and this has been a good meeting. And John, I appreciated your thoughts, particularly when one of your comments for Angela, and I think for all of us, is I agree that today's council meeting is an example of council listening and taking people's input. And Angela, with all due respect, I don't have the same level of concern that you do, because I guess during my time as mayor, I saw how well Ridgway and how much time they put into putting together the master plan. And when you see certain things written in the master plan, there are elements to the master plan. There's a part that are part of the master plan that are things like parks and infrastructure, and we've had a road plan since I was mayor. So for at least a good, probably at this point, 17, 18 years, there's been a road plan, and this project was paving Amelia Street has been a part of that plan for at least 15 years. So it wasn't a surprise to me when this topic came up. When I sat down and looked at the plans, and thanks Joanne and Ron for sharing those with us the other day. My concerns, as I wrote in my letter, and as you heard tonight from other people, so not to belabor it, is that I think the town can accomplish most of its goals, all of its goals, honestly, from County Road 5 going north, and I continue to advocate basically leaving County Road 5 to Sabeta as is. But I hear John, you particularly, and other people saying, well, let's at least look at a sidewalk for that section. And to do what you've done tonight, to have your engineers show you a potential design with that, so that so the community can do the same thing we're doing now, give you more input, I think would make sense. And I appreciate that might be a consideration. I'll just emphasize, I like Brad Blackwell when he talked about keeping the valley pan that crosses, is it at Hyde? I'm not sure or what street that is, but that crosses the street right now. That definitely slows traffic down. And I think slowing traffic down is important. A 15-mile-an-hour speed limit or 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, as long as if it's somewhat obeyed, that's great. So in that regard, my last comment is, with all due respect to the engineers, and I know it sort of makes sense to think of County Road 5 as coming down and curving rather than coming to a right angle stop like it does now. Might make sense for traffic flow, but I really, really, really think you need to have cars coming down County Road 5 come to a complete stop, or at least have a stop sign that tells them to try to come to a complete stop before they enter Amelia, rather than letting traffic flow into it without a stop sign. So those are my thoughts. I appreciate you guys' hard work. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Who's next?
Dana Ivers.
Go ahead, Dana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, my flight's been delayed. I'm in the airport in Denver, looking at the mass of humanity, and driving around Denver today with all the cement and all the tall buildings and the overpopulation, and the irony of listening to this meeting as like I don't know, the beginning of the end to me. It's seeing Denver and then thinking of the cement and the asphalt that you guys are pushing so hard for in Ridgway, which I don't understand. I don't understand why more traffic on a dirt street that slows it down would benefit from being paved. I'm not trying to interfere with people that live on that street, but if they want it paved, but I don't understand how paving a street is going to slow people down, which seems to be what your main thrust is, that there's so much traffic on Amelia Street. But that's for those people, I assume, in that block to decide, not because I don't live there. But I am curious about this sidewalk design for if you do go with that south of County Road 5. Because when I was speaking with the engineers, they were adamant that the sidewalk had to go on the east side of Amelia Street. And all I can tell you is when I see people walking, they always come over to my fence line to talk to my horses. I mean, without fail, especially if they have children. So you may have a sidewalk on the east side, but I guarantee you the people are going to be on the west side. So, and I'm assuming if you do the sidewalk on the east side, which breaks my heart to hear about it anyway, that you're going to take out all those trees on my side because you're going to have to allow for Robert's garage that's in the right of way. And it looks to me like his garage is more important than those trees, which breaks my heart too. I think that there should be a solution where his garage stays and the trees stay, which to me is a sidewalk or a gravel trail on the west side. And that would also be in fitting with whatever's left of the rural feel and lifestyle I was hoping to save for the town of Ridgway, but I seem to be getting pounded down every time I try to do something that I think is important to save this planet from destruction. And the irony of you saying that asphalt is what you need to put down for safety. I mean, the world's coming to an end. We are burning up, and who's going to care if there's safety if if we have no climate, if we're walking around in 120-degree weather because we asphalted the town of Ridgway. That's just one little grain of sand in the whole world is our town. But you can look at it as an example of probably what's happening everywhere, because you are enlightened people. Our town is enlightened, and we still are not doing the right thing. I know how enlightened you are, John, and I know how enlightened Terry is. He's an amazing human being, and everyone that's spoken is enlightened. But we're just stuck in our pudding of, I don't know, what is the pudding we're stuck in? We need to change our thoughts on how this world is coming down for our children and our grandchildren. And I'm sorry, get on my soapbox, but I'll tell you, I'm leaving your town as soon as I can if I don't see something changing. And Michael was supposed to read my letter, which he didn't do. And I know everybody at the town council knows what it says, but I'd like the town to know that I'm pulling off that conservation easement if this town continues going the way it is, because I could put my money somewhere else where people care. And I thank you all for listening to me, and please use your higher selves, your soul and your heart. Use that when you make these decisions. Thank you. And I got to get on my plane to see my grandkids. So thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Dana. And I would disagree that anybody's ramming this through or pushing this through. We're here to discuss a possible project, and it hasn't been decided at all. So your points are heard and taken. We've already discussed quite a bit, scaling this back. The cost alone.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me. I don't think that the thrust of my talk was talking about ramming anything through. I think that the thrust of my talk is that we need to look at ourselves and try to figure out how we're going to run this world before there's no world left. I'm not talking about ramming anything through. So, and I think Angela is amazing. We should all applaud Angela Haas for what she presented to all of us. And please don't use the word ramming through. It's just a negative word.
I'm sorry, I apologize. You said that we were pushing this and that we weren't, you used the word pushing, not ramming. I apologize, but you did say we were pushing this and we didn't seem to be willing to pull back at all. And we are certainly fully willing to pull back and look at this further. I don't think there's any doubt up here that all of us are open to any and all alternatives here. So nothing has been decided. And I was just responding to your use of the word pushing because you said you thought we weren't listening to you. We're definitely listening to you. So I apologize.
I know.
For using the word ram.
Okay, John, I know you're listening. I know you guys have, I know how intelligent you all are. Please use the good brain, use the right brain when you make these decisions. And thank you again for letting me talk. I appreciate it. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Safe travels. Anyone else?
Vicky's iPad.
Vicky Haas, is that you?
Yes, hi, sorry, I don't have my last name on my iPad.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, John. And I'm just grateful for everybody that's spoken and for the town council and mayor and all that you guys are doing. And I'm very grateful to hear that this is not a fixed project and that it's still open to deliberation. And I agree with, I can't remember the woman's name that said, I've already spoken about the danger of crossing Sherman at Amelia Street, and it's always dangerous, not just when school kids are crossing it. So that's just a perennial issue. I feel like when you pave and widen a street, I know this has been said, but that like has the opposite effect of slowing down traffic. So just for the record, I am opposed to paving and widening the streets. I completely support sidewalks anywhere that they can be put in. And I keep hearing that there's a plan that is goes along with paving for slowing traffic, but I have yet to hear what that is. Is it speed bumps or troughs? Could you share with us what that is, or maybe I've missed it? But anyway, thank you for your time and your service, and thanks for hearing all of our input. And I would appreciate, I'm grateful that you're willing to revisit even doing this project, and I'm grateful that you seem very willing to collect more data and community input. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicki.
Angela has her hand up again.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just was asked to read a letter from Ava House, who owns a property on the corner of Amelia and Sabeta. And she wasn't able to attend. The council received this letter and she asked me to read it tonight. We are property owners directly affected by this proposal, and we haven't received any communication from the town so far. I have briefly reached out to Preston about my concerns, but would like you to add some more details of those concerns to the upcoming meeting. We have young children and we appreciate your concern for pedestrians, but I don't share that same concern for this stretch of Amelia because I have been able to teach my very young kids how to be careful on the street. The street, the way it is, doesn't get much traffic, and the street, the way it is, slows cars down. I'm worried that the alteration of this section will increase traffic and the charming small town character of the corner with trees and natural beauty might get lost. And thank you for the opportunity to read that.
Sure, you're welcome. Anybody else have their hands up?
No other hands on Zoom.
Anybody else on Zoom want to make a comment or have a question?
Yes, this is Johanna Wasser.
Hi, Johanna.
Hi. I just, I mean, I have a lot of things on my mind and my heart. For those of you that don't know me and my family, we have 2 properties on Amelia directly across from the elementary school. So this very much affects us. We have gone to the town several times, which we really appreciate the efforts that the town has been making, at least trying to come up with some sort of solutions, which I agree with Vicky. I still don't know what those solutions may be about safety for our family, for our pets, for children that walk to school on a regular basis. We moved to Ridgway 16 years ago, and we fell in love with the small town feel and the dirt roads especially. We are not in favor of paving the roads. And I think we've all heard it multiple times this evening why. But we are in favor of coming up with some solutions, which we really do appreciate the town putting 2 additional stop signs on Amelia, which has helped. Someone earlier had asked if there have been any accidents on the stretch of Amelia, and I will say that they may not have been reported, but we've seen multiple accidents on Amelia, primarily people running off the road because they're driving so fast and they peel out and get stuck in the ditch. We've also seen carcasses of deer on the road as well for people driving too fast. Anyway, what I would really like is a copy of the PowerPoint as well as the proposed plan, so I can share this with my husband. We have one of our property has I was going to say parking lot. Our driveway is accessible only from Amelia, and so we just want to see what that would do if there are sidewalks, how much, you know, what would this do to that side, I guess the west side of our property? How much land would we lose from that? And I look forward to working with the town and learning more about this project, and also sharing my voice and my thoughts and opinions and learning from you all too. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. I'll make sure that staff puts a copy of the PowerPoint in the PDF of the layout on the town website.
Thanks. And if I can't find it on the website, because sometimes I can't find things on the website, I'll just ask you guys directly.
Sounds good. I know there's a meeting notice for tonight's meeting, but it doesn't include the PowerPoint and the plan. The PowerPoint was just finished today or yesterday, I think. But we can make sure we get it on the website, I'm sure. Anyone else? Either here in the room or on Zoom.
Yeah, I just want to, clarify my comment on transparency. And I do agree with Pat that I think that this is Angela speaking, that, I do fully appreciate the process of being able to, participate in our community decisions like we're doing right now. But in terms of transparency as like coming from an informed place as community members, it would be helpful if things were referenced a little bit more clearly, so we could, if someone comes into a decision, a process that's been discussed 10 years ago, for someone like that, when I learned about this, it wasn't clear that this has been a long-term project. And if there were like links to past agenda items, I know this sounds awful for whoever has to do it, but if there was a bit more of a chain of things that have happened in the decision-making process, and I know that that's challenging, but it's that adds to trust and transparency when the community can easily reference things that influence your decisions and the chain of things that have happened. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Angela, your point's well taken. And I certainly, as somebody who's been involved as long as I have, I've seen firsthand how many times we get sort of insular and because we're in the trenches on all this stuff all the time, we make assumptions about what people who come into a meeting know about something that we're talking about. And that's, that could be challenging. And you're right. The best thing we could do is have a detailed historical detail of chain of information about how we got to a certain point about everything that we talk about. As you said, that's pretty challenging to try and do for everything that we discuss, but I can assure you that we'll work with staff to try to make sure we do a better job of talking about the background of things that we bring up in meetings so that everybody understands kind of the historical place of how we got to where we are, as hard as that is.
And John, I would add on actual votes that we make. Staff is really awesome about putting that background in the staff reports.
We do our best, I know that.
The minutes are great, and but if I would have known from the stuff that went out for the workshop that to reference the April minutes, I wouldn't have had to go through all the different minutes to look for where this initial discussion to hire to get the engineers working. That it's just little details like that. It doesn't have to be too deep. Little
Understood.
references could help. Thank you.
Understood. Point taken. Yep. All right, anyone else? Okay, I think,
John, can I make a quick observation?
Go ahead, Terry.
With regards to the issue of the sidewalk south of Sabeda, I just want to point out that the people, whether they be kids or adults walking on that stretch, would encounter the same conditions, whether they be the terrain or the amount of traffic, as they would on Sabeda itself. So there's no real delineation in the conditions that would, in my mind, justify a sidewalk there, because otherwise it begs the question of why not a sidewalk down Sabeda. So just wanted to make that observation.
Yeah, I mean, my only response to that, Terry, would be eventually we should have a sidewalk down Sabeda, and the best way to get there is to do it a little bit at a time. You know, I've lived here long enough. I raised two kids here. They're now 30 and 33, almost 31 and 34, actually. And they grew up on these dirt streets, and we're fine, obviously. What concerns me is that we're growing, and we're growing rapidly. And whether we like it or not, traffic is going to increase, and the question of safety to our pedestrians is paramount. So while I totally agree that right now the need for a sidewalk from County Road 5 to Sabeda is questionable at best, it's, in my experience, we get these things done incrementally, little by little. So, you know, again, I think where I'm feeling we are tonight at this point in this meeting is we've had a lot of great feedback. We've had some detailed feedback about specific sections of this. I'm hearing a lot of concern about whether pavement is really necessary and whether the asphalt is the right thing to use if we do some sort of hard surfacing. Whether hard surfacing even serves the purpose of creating more safety. That's a really good question. There's a need to do probably another traffic study to get some vehicle counts. Probably need to do it at 2 different times a year to get as accurate as possible. But again, I just have to reiterate that the reason we're here tonight is because this thing has been on the capital improvements plan for a long time. And we saw the opportunity to at least fund a design process. That's what we're looking at tonight. And I think we'll go back to the drawing board essentially and try and figure out how we can best evaluate the wherewithal to do this. I think there were comments made tonight about how much this would cost individual townspeople. I don't think there's any intention on the town council's part to like do a bond issue or anything like that. I think the only way we're ever going to do this is with grant funds from the state. So I think there's a lot of work yet to be done, and I guess I'd open it up to council to see if anybody else wants to make a summary comment.
John, quickly along the line of grant funds available from the state, I wonder if there's a way, and I know it takes work to cast the net a little wider, the concept of some sort of a environmentally friendly alternative to the hard surfacing options that were presented. I wonder if that opens the door for other grant funding for something that's experimental, unique, cutting edge, bleeding edge, whatever you want to call it. So, something to consider that this could be a unique opportunity to look for funding that's kind of outside the box, because it represents an opportunity for something unique. So I'm going to throw that into the mix of further confusing issues.
No, I mean, sky's the limit when it comes to trying to cast that wide net you're talking about.
Exactly.
So, anyone else?
I think you summed it up nicely, John. This is a preliminary discussion on things that are inevitable in time on Amelia Street, growth and development. And this is great feedback. I think you summed it up nicely.
Okay, thanks. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here on Zoom, and hope you all have a great weekend.
Is there anybody that wants to look at their specific driveway? Yours won't be impacted at all.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate what you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very